All right, guys. So today on the Art of Winning, we have somebody that's built 7 different businesses and 5 different industries, as well as a business that helps entrepreneurs launch their brand through podcasts, which I find to be very helpful with my brand, obviously, because I'm using it today. But more than that, she talks about her experience and the ups and downs of being an entrepreneur, and then some of the things that help accelerate her, like finding a niche and then developing that niche and resonating with your avatar or the person you're trying to sell to market to. So all those things are really important as an entrepreneur. She's got a ton of experience with it, so it was really fun talking to her. Plus the fact that she focused on the podcast as a catalyst for growing your business. So that's a huge piece to it. And I think a lot of people can leverage that to grow, whether that's to grow their brand or to educate their audience about their product they're selling, whatever it is, right? So I hope you guys enjoy it. Please remember, if you like the show, please rate and review, leave us a review. Let us know what you think of the show. And because we'd love to hear from you. And additionally, if you guys are looking to create passive income, if you're looking to get into the short-term rental business, the luxury Airbnbs, we're doing both that right now. We have, we're still investing in large multifamily properties across the Sun Belt. And, there's reasons why we like the Sun Belt. And that's because that's where everybody's moving. That's where the jobs are going. That's where the population is moving. So there's a lot of growth in that area. So we're buying up Airbnbs in places we want a vacation, but they're all along the Sun Belt because that's where people want a vacation as well. And it creates cash flow for us. But then on the flip side, we created a $20 million fund to invest in and buy large multifamily properties. And the reason for that is because of the tax implications or the tax deductions that come with investing in large real estate like this. So if you're not investing in real estate, I recommend checking it out. I mean, the volatility of the stock market is up and down these days. But we know that real estate is not going away. That's going to be a human necessity for a long time. So if you want more information on how you can get started, if you want to do your own Airbnb, or if you want to invest alongside experienced operators like ourselves, you can always check us out on our website, www.valkyriegroup.com. And that's VALKERE group.com. But enough about me. Let's get to the show. Let's learn how we can promote our business through strategic podcasts and niching down. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoy it. All right, let's get to it. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to The Art of Winning with your host, Ashton. Today we have a great guest on. Not saying our other guests are not great, but but yeah. So this was interesting. Yeah. I love talking to other entrepreneurs. I love talking to people that have created businesses, that have built things, from nothing, or and so I want to welcome Deirdre Tshien to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm excited. So Deirdre is the co-founder and CEO of Capsho. It's the first AI-powered podcast copywriter. And so I want to dive into that and see what that is, what that actually entails. But she's got a bunch of experience here, and we want to leverage that, learn as much as we can. Because there's a lot of people that are trying to do, a lot of this stuff. And I think podcasting is a great way, especially for entrepreneurs, to build a brand, get their message out there. So I think you bring a lot to the table in that, as well as the fact that you've started, 7 other businesses across 5 industries. I don't know a lot of people that have done that. And so Deirdre, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. I look forward to diving into your bio. You have a lot more in there that I left out. But thank you for being with us.
Yeah, my pleasure, Ashton. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, can we get like a 60-second snapshot of who you are, where you're from, and what got you to where you are today?
Wow. Okay.
Maybe that's not enough time.
Yeah. So I grew up in Sydney, Australia, which is where my accent is from. And definitely for context, my parents are first migrants from Malaysia. So typical Asians, I had to get good grades. I was meant to become a doctor. I failed them at that. And I went into corporate instead. Decided that wasn't for me. Opened my first business back in 2013, so almost a decade ago. It was in hospitality. called the Chocolate. It was a dessert bar. We can definitely get into that story, but
That sounds fun.
yeah, it was, definitely a lot of ups and downs, as there always is in entrepreneurship. We grew that store to that brand, the Chockpot, to 5 locations in Sydney. We opened a burger restaurant alongside that, so we had 2 of those locations. We got stolen from a trusted employee, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow.
Kind of like snapped us out of, I guess we kind of built a hamster wheel for ourselves. Like we'd went from one hamster wheel and just jumped into another one. And it made me realize that wasn't necessarily the path that I wanted to be on. And with that decision, we also made the big decision to move to New York City, which is where I am now. I started a fashion tech. Well, it didn't really start it. We explored this fashion technology idea with another co-founder that I had. Failed it. Transitioned into agency work, transitioned that into coaching, built the first iteration of Capsho, which is quite different to what it is now. And then we are here. And I know that I totally missed out so many things in there. There's so much detail, but you only gave me 60 seconds. So I wanted to keep to that.
No, that's great. And I definitely want to get into more of that. So where do we start? So okay, to recap, you started a chocolate business, a dessert business.
A dessert bar, yeah.
Dessert bar.
In Sydney. So yeah, it was one of those, I was in that moment, I said I was in corporate. So I was in an investment bank actually. Okay. And very quickly, I hit quarter life crisis, and I realized that, corporate wasn't the thing that was going to be for me. And so, but I didn't know what was, I was kind of like, trying to figure out. I think a lot of us do. And I feel like constantly, even now, we're trying to figure out what we want to be when we grow up. And so that was definitely me. My boyfriend, now husband, at the time, he was actually studying medicine and was miserable. So he hated it. So we were both in our quarter life crises going, what are we going to do next? Yeah. We just moved out. He discovered a love actually of cooking and particularly baking, which is also because I am so bad at it. Like I tried, I'm so bad at cooking, but he actually really enjoys it. So, and he started trying to perfect my favorite desserts. And that was, it was over a particular dessert, my favorite, which is like a lava cake, a chocolate molten pudding. Nice. It was over that dessert that we were like, maybe we can give this a go, because he was really enjoying creating the product. I have much more of a business mind around things. So I thought that was that's quite complimentary. So we did. And I don't know how we got there. I don't know how we got this thing opened, because the number of barriers that were thrown our way, the debt that we had to take out, like all of the things. I look back at that now and I'm like, how in the world did we actually get this store open? Anyway, so we did. And it's really funny because, again, young, naive, there's some good and bad things about being young and naive. The good thing is that was probably the reason why we got the thing opened, because we had no idea what we were in store for. The bad thing is we had no idea what we were in store for. And I had totally been relying on the strategy of build it and they will come, because we knew we had the best thing out there. And we were like, so obviously everyone's going to be banging our doors down, surely. And obviously that doesn't happen. So we struggled for months we were dead quiet. I think there were some days that we only sold a handful of coffees. It was a really, 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 I don't want to make this sound dramatic, but it was a really dark time, I think, of entrepreneurship. There were lots of downs, but that, when you launch on such a high and then you go plummeting like really quickly and really, really deeply, that was a bit of a shock to the system. And so we had to scramble. So we had to, meanwhile, we had rent to pay, wages, suppliers, debt, all of these things. So I still had to work full time to help support all of that. But we did finally get there. And there's this story that I remember where it was a Friday night. It was one of the first Friday nights that my husband and I were able to take off together. And we were at my favorite sushi restaurant, and because we weren't busy, so we only had 2 people working on a Friday night, right? 2 people working in the store. So you can tell how quiet it was. And we get a call from one of them, and he's like, you guys have to come in. Like, I have to go, but you guys have to come in now. And we're like, oh my gosh, what has happened? Have we like something? It sounds like something has just blown up. So, we run to the car, we hop in, and I have to drop my husband off so I can find parking. And I still remember, so it was at the front of the store, and I still remember, like, to this day, what it looked like, which is that it was packed and there was a line waiting, like, of people waiting. Like, people were just helping themselves to the furniture in terms of like just moving tables around and, chairs to fit themselves in. And it felt like we were an immediate overnight success. That's not the truth, but that's what it felt like. And it was from there, it kind of just grew.
Well, I'm sure that felt really good. Overnight success feels good. That's called, I think the kids call it going viral, maybe. I don't know. That's only social media. I'm not sure. That's really cool.
Yeah. So, it's funny that you mentioned social media, because we were leveraging a lot of social media at that time, which I think we do credit for a lot of our growth back then and getting the word out there. So, that's kind of what happened.
So I'm a huge fan of social media, not because I like it in a sense, but I think it's a 10x, 100x multiplier if you use it right for your business.
Yes.
It'd also be a massive time suck too if you're not careful, but
Totally. Yeah. So at the time, we were kind of fortunate because it was at a similar time that Instagram was really just growing. So if you think about what everyone's saying about TikTok now, it's like, you got to get in because it's just, it's really growing. That was kind of what Instagram was like at that time. So we were fortunate that we were just riding that wave. Honestly, if I was going to be totally honest. So it was, I think between definitely Instagram taking off and us just trying to do everything. I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I just started reaching it because I'd be like, okay, someone would give me a tip and I'd be like, okay, I've got to go implement. And so, someone mentioned, they were like, well, there are a lot of food bloggers. Maybe you should get food. I was like, great idea. So I'm like, and, because bloggers were a bigger thing back then.
Yeah.
So I'd be like reaching out to all these bloggers, and that is, and that's why I say it felt like an immediate overnight success, but it really wasn't, because that felt like a slow burn. It was like we were getting these people in and they were enjoying it and they would be raving about us, but it was like, it's not like, unless you get, I think, like a Kim Kardashian or something, you're not going to get this massive but I think it was that momentum, like a lot of them starting to drive it, and they were starting to get Instagram, so we were getting more shares. We were really starting to create virality on that platform. So that's really, I think, what drove that initial growth for us.
That is, I think that's great. And so there's two things I want to touch on that, and then I kind of want to move on, because you have seven other businesses to get through, or six other. But so a lot of people they cringe at the idea of going into a business with their family, right? With somebody they love, right? And in my business, I'm a partner with my brother, and both our wives are involved as well. So I get asked that all the time. I'm curious, how did you guys deal with it, or were there struggles? How did that work for you guys?
Yeah, it was really funny because we're very different people. Like in all of the, personality tests or whatever, like we're always not ever the same.
You're my wife.
So, yeah, right.
Like, completely different.
Yeah. So I think that's probably the first thing, is like, we very much know what our strengths are individually. We very much know what our weaknesses are, and we just leverage, Now I say that now back then, this was, almost 10 years ago, we probably didn't have as much of a sense of that. So there were some nights, and it's really funny because I remember we had like this really busy night in the store. We were both working, and we had a team of probably about maybe 3 or 4 other people working with us. And Ash can get he's generally the most chilled out. Talk about Aussies, that he's like chilled out, very laid back. But this particular night, he was like, because it was so busy and we were all like, he was like shouting at me, because it was about orders and stuff like that and things like that. But just because it was like the whole atmosphere was like the place was buzzing. We're trying to get the orders done. Like we're slightly falling behind. He's not shouting at me from like you do this, you do that, but more like, process wise, like,
Mhm.
you know, this chocolate needs to get in the oven. Like, and I'm like, I know, I'm getting to it. So we're both just like shouting at each other.
Yeah.
And I think it was funny because like, we know that that's the heat of the moment and we're not attacking each other. That's just in that moment, that's how we just needed to communicate. But I think our team was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Because they're not used to seeing us that way. But I think that's the thing, right? It's definitely knowing like your lanes and such, your strengths, your weaknesses, and then also forgiving, you know, like we ended that night and it was just, we ended it on such a high because it was such a busy night and we did get through it and we pulled together as a team and, you know, and so at the end of that, you kind of just be like, yeah, we get it. It was the heat of the moment, you know, we're kind of like, and it is what it is. Let's like, and we just don't hold that stuff against each other. And I think that's really important. Like the power of forgiveness, just even in that moment, is just such a strong thing to tell.
Yeah, I think you said two things. Like, yes, know your role. You do have to have established roles, and expectations need to be managed because of that. So he doesn't expect you to do the cooking, so he's not going to yell at you about that, right? Or vice versa. Like whatever you're doing, like you have to know those roles and you have to manage those expectations early on. And really, I think it goes beyond just family. You could, any type of good business, you should have that. But yeah, and then the other question I wanted to ask, just real quick, biggest lesson learned from that business?
Oh wow. Maybe don't start with a brick and mortar business.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine there's a lot of debt in that, obviously, right? To get everything started.
It's a tough business to get into. I think a lot of us do it because, I don't know. I think it's something that's relatively simple, but not. It's simple to come up with an idea of a brick and mortar business. And sometimes it sounds good to be like, oh, I'd love to like just be able to come in and sit down and have have a coffee. And that's great. But the reality of it is very, very different. It's very challenging. It's very hard. So look, I don't regret anything because I fundamentally believe that everything happens for a reason. And if we had not done that, we would not be on this path and land here what it is that we're doing now.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
But like, you know, if I was to, so I don't regret it, but you know, if I were to tell, you know, I probably would have questioned, I would have been a little bit more, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what do they say? I hear this quote all the time, like in today's day and age with technology, with Zoom calls, with everything, you can have a business from your house and solve some sort of problem and create a business around that very easily. More millionaires are being created in today's generation than any other time before. So I definitely understand that, resonate with that. And I can imagine just working in the restaurant industry as a kid, like I can only imagine having to run one myself. That'd be nuts. But okay. So after that, you called it quits on the dessert bar and moved to New York. Is that right? Did I miss anything?
Well, in a sense. So they're still running actually in Sydney.
Is it?
So yeah.
You guys still own it?
Yeah, we do. So we set it up
great.
when we made the decision to move to New York. We were like, okay, what do we do? And we gave ourselves 6 months essentially to install the team, systemize everything. I mean, we were pretty good even from day one at systemizing, making sure that everything was really super systemized. But since we were actually physically not going to be there, we did the further work. We didn't know that we wouldn't be able to go back for like another 2 to 3 years. So, you know, the plan was going to be that we would check in, you know, once or twice a year.
What year was this?
This was 2019 that we moved. Okay. Yeah. So mid 2019, just before COVID hit. Yeah. So they still running. And yeah, we made the move over to New York.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So that was business number 1, correct?
1 and 2, because we also have the burger restaurant. Yeah. It's called Stacks. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's awesome. And that's in Sydney as well?
That's in Sydney as well. Yeah.
Next time I'm down there, I'm gonna have to check it out.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. So then you came to New York, and
yes.
Did I hear you correctly? And you said you got into design?
So yeah, just before moving to New York, I had met one of actually my co-founder now, one of my best friends back then, but we'd met in corporate. And at the time, we were actually exploring this fashion technology idea. So she kind of moonlights as a personal stylist. And I was really interested in, the capabilities of AI and like starting to explore that space. Plus I had the problem of I just actually don't like shopping. I just really don't like shopping. And so I was like, I shop twice a year, before summer and before winter, like that's kind of my cadence. And it was like in one of those times when I was trawling through, page after page of, because I need to stock up on my winter wardrobe. And I just could not I couldn't figure out what was the thing for me. So anyway, I remember going to work the next day and I was like, oh my gosh, Bonner, like I just had the worst night, spent all my time on online shopping and I didn't buy anything. I just wish that, there was something that would make this a lot easier. And so from there, we started to work on this fashion technology idea that actually when we decided to make the move to New York. So we started exploring that in Sydney. And when we decided to make the move to New York, I remember talking to her about it and I was like, yes, so we made this big decision. We're going to move to New York. And she was so supportive and she was so happy for us. And we're talking about like how we could make it work. She'd do Southern Hemisphere hours. I do Northern Hemisphere. And then in the end, I was just like, do you want to come? I remember this was over like lasagna. We were in an Italian restaurant. I was like, do you just want to come? By the way, I'm working with this lawyer for to work our visas out. And she did mention that, there's kind of like a, buy one, get one half price deal. And, being Asian, I'm very value conscious.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe we should take advantage of this deal. It's just like, that's a great reason to make a move to the other side of the world. But she was like, oh, okay, let me think about it. And I didn't realize this until she told me actually a couple of weeks ago, but she was like, yeah, that night she was just like getting ready for bed. And then she just started crying. And I was like, oh my gosh, why did you cry? And she was like, because she realized that she was going to do it. And that would mean, because she's very close to her family and that would mean all of these things. And so, so that was, so we decided to make the move together. So I came to New York with my husband, my cat, and my co-founder in tow. So, but, I think we gave ourselves 12 months to make it work, to make this idea, into something. Yeah. And pretty much 4 months into it, we failed it. We decided to fail it because we were talking. So one of the very first things we did was we started just pounding the pavement. Our hypothesis was that our users were going to be college students or young professionals. So we were at Columbia Uni, NYU campus, Wall Street, and we were just talking to women just to find out if this was, a problem worth solving. And what we found was that while it was a problem, it wasn't a problem that was big enough that people would actually change their habits for.
Yeah.
And that's really important when we talk about product market fit, because it would take we would need a lot of runway to be able to have a business like that actually grow and succeed. So we decided to fail it. And we had no idea what to do. So when I say we gave ourselves 12 months, we literally, because what we had to do, since we were completely foreign, we had no credit, we had no rental history, nothing. In order for us to actually even be able to get like an apartment, we had to prepay 12 months worth of rent, which was like all of our savings. But you can imagine how much, and this is New York City we're talking about, right?
Yeah, it's like a couple million.
So literally we had 12 months. And so now we were like, what the heck are we going to do? Yeah. There were two things that happened. One was that we just needed cash relatively quickly. Mm-hmm. Now, I ran into an old acquaintance of ours, actually also from Australia. Didn't realize he had moved to New York City, but he was helping a British company chocolate company actually open stores in New York. And so I was just like, look, do you need help in any way? Because we're kind of like, we need cash, we need money. And so he actually gave us two jobs. So one was that because he was looking to actually expand online, And so he knew what I'd done sort of back in Sydney with a retail store. So he was like really comfortable with the fact that I had retail experience, but he was like, can you find a way to transition that online? So that was one thing. So we started doing that with him. And then the other thing was that he was like, I don't know, this is random, but this spot's open, was like to be a delivery driver, because he needed, there was a warehouse in Jersey that chocolates were getting sent to, and he needed someone to transport those chocolates back into New York. So we became delivery drivers, which is such a funny part of the story. But because we also started working with him on his, online marketing, digital presence, we actually started this agency. And funnily enough, because we were, when we were exploring that fashion technology idea, we were also speaking to brands and boutiques at the same time, because they would have had to be the other side of the marketplace. And so we actually went back to them and were like, hey, we're not doing that thing anymore, but we're now doing this thing. Is this of interest? So we actually started to get some pretty early traction from an agency perspective with e-commerce. Now, that was kind of, that was because we fell into it. We sort of had to. So it was never really a business that we wanted to scale. And so we transitioned into coaching. So we started coaching e-commerce business owners on how to grow their businesses online. And then from that experience, because, my main thing very much, especially for product-based businesses, is you have to become, and when they're growing, when they're just starting out, it's like you have to be the face of the business, because you are your only differentiator right now. Like anyone can sell a top or shoes or jewelry. But the way that you do it, the background, the personality that you bring to it, you're the only person who can do that.
Yeah.
So you have to start telling your stories. And they were like, okay, I get it, Deirdre, but how do I I don't know how to tell my stories. And so that's actually what led into the first iteration of Capsho. And so the first iteration of Capsho, it was very, very rudimentary, very rules-based, but essentially it would prompt you through questions that would elicit your story. So we had to use it to describe it. Yeah, it was kind of like, she was like, oh, it's kind of like a combination of Mad Libs and journaling. Like that was kind of, so it would prompt you through, and then it would take those, and the software would actually create a bank of social media captions and emails from it. So that was the first iteration. And so we were like, this is awesome. We can help all entrepreneurs with this. And you can probably tell how well that story goes trying to help everyone. We were getting no cut through. We were getting absolutely, it was just struggle street. So we spoke to a coach of ours, and so we spoke to a coach of ours, and he was like, you've got to niche down. Like you just have to. And it's a painful process. Like we were like, no, you don't understand. We're different. we don't need to niche down.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, no one's different. We are not different. So, because we're very coachable, we're like, okay, fine, we'll do this thing of having to niche down. And so we did. And what I realized, is, and this is always a funny thing, we always end up back at, who we are fundamentally. For me, I had to go through a bit of a process, but what I realized was, because I had grown the coaching business, we were doing multiple six figures in that business, but a big part of that was because of the podcast that I had. And that was a big part of, what I had done for the last couple of years. And so when we were thinking about who are the people that we want to serve and help, it just made sense to work with experts, essentially, so coaches, consultants, service providers who podcast, because that's exactly what we were. And so that it felt like a light bulb moment, but it's kind of also like, well, duh, because that's, that's what you do. And so the great thing about podcasters is that you don't have to convince them to tell a story. Like they are natural storytellers. They love the power stories. So that was the great thing. And so because we had niche down, we actually completely then, it opened up our minds to what the possibilities could be for where Capsho could go. which is how really the second iteration, the iteration now that we've just launched, came about. So what it does now, it's an AI-powered podcast copywriter. So you upload an audio file, and it literally creates episode title, description, show notes, social media captions, and email for you. Really high quality draft. Obviously, it's AI, so a person fully does need to like jump in and make some edits, but it saves our users anywhere from like 1 to 6 hours a week doing this. So
if they're editing their own podcast, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So
editing is more the post-production. It's more the promotional assets if they're doing that.
Right. And so I think this is awesome. There's some really cool points in there that I've learned as an entrepreneur as well. I think that a lot of people overlook the niche. Like you do have to have a niche market. Like people don't resonate with people that identify as everybody, right? So you do have to, and it's a lot more genuine too, because you're telling your story, but you're trying to connect with people that have no relation to that story. So yeah, I think that's huge. And social media is a big promoter of that. And we've already talked about that. Like if you can tell your story, people resonate with that. They want to work with you. They want to buy your product. I think that's really important. And the AI powered podcast, what did you call it? AI powered podcast copywriter. And it pulls out it. So it essentially pulls out the information from the podcast. So like if we submitted this podcast, it would pull out all the words and interpret that and come up with good branding and marketing material.
Yeah. So yeah.
Did I oversimplify it, or is that?
I guess it depends on. The only reason why I was like, oh yeah, because branding can be very different. So it doesn't do branding as much, but yeah, marketing. So promoting your podcast. So all the things that you need to promote your podcast. You need a good title, one that's catchy, one that's SEO optimized. You need a good description, show notes, social media captions, email. Those are the things that we currently do inside Capsho.
That is super cool. So let me ask you, why would somebody? So you're marketing to podcasters. You're marketing to me.
Capsho. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You should get on it, Ashton.
I will check it out. Absolutely. We are looking for, better. I mean, yeah, we're going through all those struggles, like, right. Trying to develop that out. But what was I going to say? Okay. So why, if somebody was looking to start a podcast, you're not talking to them, you're talking to people that already have an existing podcast.
Yeah. So currently that's who we're talking to. But I mean, if you're looking to start a podcast, I mean, there's heaps of resources out there about how to start a podcast. So we didn't really want to further crowd that. But Capsho is going to help you get started so much quicker. So we can definitely have a part to play in that for sure.
And you mentioned SEO, which I think is extremely powerful. And if you're not incorporating that in your business, you're probably missing out hundreds and hundreds of people even just going to your website, let alone sales, whatever those equate to. But so you do SEO. And then what was the other one?
So it's designed to create what I call content honey traps. So this is kind of core to my strategies, content honey traps. And what that is, if we were to really dumb it down, is how do we create so much curiosity in someone that they need to do the thing that you want them to do? And so that's what Capsho, that's what it's built upon, which is how do we, because it is something that we're marketing, right? Like our podcast, everything needs to have that. It needs to create that compulsion. And so we've actually inbuilt into the logic, into the AI, into the brain, how to create content honey traps. So in everywhere, so in the description, in the show notes, in the email, in those social media captions, I've kind of fed it my mental models. So I have 8 mental models around content honey traps. Really simple. And I can, give you examples of a couple of them. Some are super obvious, like the cliffhanger is a very obvious one. When it's story-based, you want to leave people on a cliffhanger because that's what has them be like, oh, I've got to find out what happens next. I've got to go listen to it. So that's a really, really obvious one. And then we have, so we kind of have 4 mental models around story-based, the story-based part of a podcast. And then we have 4 around the value or the tips that were shared by the expert. And so an example of that could look like what we call the rebel, which is you actually, in your social media caption or email or whatever, you could be like, I'm going to talk about this topic. Let's say I'm going to talk about social media.
Mm-hmm.
What it's not about is, but this is what it's not about. It's not about this is I can't think of an example. Okay, this is what I'm not going to be talking about. I'm not going to be talking about posting and ghosting. I'm not going to be talking about getting a viral video up. I'm not going to be talking about finding the best hashtags. But what do I talk about? Go listen to the episode.
Yeah.
How do you best grow on social media? Go listen to the episode. That was a really rough example, but it's like you get the gist, right? So you share about what you're not talking about, so people are like, well, I wonder what it is, so they have to go listen to it.
Yeah, I love this, because this is something we've struggled with in our business. So ours is real estate investing, and so we work with other partners, obviously, and other investors. But it's a funnel, and that's at the top of the funnel. Like, you may have a podcast, you may have a website, you may have a blog, whatever, YouTube videos, but how are you getting people to watch those? And then of course, that video or that blog, that podcast is supposed to drive people to do something else, right? So how do you get them to that first part of the funnel? And so that's what your product is doing, right? That's what Capsho is doing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, sometimes I do have to dumb it down.
No, I love it.
21 years in the military and rugby and yeah. But no, I think that's brilliant. I like it. What biggest lessons learned in developing AI? I'm really curious on how you mental models. I've never even heard of that.
Yeah. Gosh, lessons learned is sometimes it can have a mind of its own too. Sometimes it really surprises me to be like, either really positively to be like, wow, that was really good. Also really negative to be like, what happened? It literally is like a child where you're just like, you wake up and you could be surprised that day at any moment about what this thing is going to spit out. So that's been a journey for sure. But I think, definitely in terms of one of the biggest lessons that I've recently learned. So we only actually launched our beta program. So we opened it up for the first time last week. Mm-hmm. And I think we did a really good job marketing it. I think we had 160 people on the beta and then about another 100 on the wait list. That's continuing to grow even now. I'm getting pinged all the time with new people signing up. And so we had created all this excitement. We'd sort of, we're really regularly in touch with the people, and we're like, okay, we're launching June 1st. That's when we're launching. And then June 1st comes around and we're like doing our final tests and it wasn't working. And I'm like, oh my God, what the hell? Anyway, so we have to get in touch. And I'm expecting, because I'm talking to our developers, and I'm expecting that it's going to be fixed, that it's quick. It's a quick fix. Nothing in technology is a quick fix, by the way. And so Bonner, my co-founder, was up until 3 a.m. that morning just testing. And then we finally set it live. And then, because this is the thing that gets over, so the biggest thing, if anyone's getting into software, is don't overlook what you think is the simplest part of it. Mm-hmm. We would think that the simplest part of any technology business is the sign up, right? Mm-hmm. You create an account, and that's meant that every single software out there does that. Right. And yet that was where everyone was failing. They could not actually sign up.
Oh no.
And it was a disaster. So it's literally we had to make some changes. It literally took quite a few days. I mean, the good thing is that everyone has been so gracious and so forgiving. I don't know if I would be now that I've been on this side, I definitely will be. But, if I was on the other side, not knowing how difficult this stuff is, I don't know if I would have been, but everyone's been so gracious and so forgiving about it. But it was, we had overlooked really testing that part of the flow. And that was
focused on the software, not necessarily signing up for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's good to have people go through the process initially, probably. That's a tough one, because we've had issues like that too. People are like, I didn't even get the email. What are you talking about? The email, what? That was the easiest part, sending the email, but
exactly. Yeah.
So that's interesting. I am, so let me ask you this last question. I know a lot of people outsource this type of stuff to the Philippines, to India. I think there's even some down in Mexico and stuff. What would be the benefits of going through and just, purely out of curiosity, what's the benefits,
Yeah.
cost base versus, I don't know, time, maybe is it culture, it picks up on our culture, Western culture better, or, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's all of the above, to be honest. Because I think like I love outsourcing or
Mhm.
delegating, as I call it, because I have VAs in my own team.
Yeah.
But I think we all know that they're amazing, but either you have to pay really well to have someone who's like a good copywriter,
You get what you
or
pay for. Yeah.
it takes them a lot of time, or the quality isn't as great.
Right.
So with Capsho, you fast track it. So time wise, even if you wanted them to be involved in the process still, which I would highly recommend having someone involved in the process, you're potentially not having to pay this person for however long it takes for them to listen to an episode, come up with an episode, like a title, a description, write the show notes, you don't. And if they even do that, right? Because a lot of podcasts I speak to don't even do show notes because they're just like, can't be bothered. It's, all of that.
Yeah.
So this not only saves that time, but it actually potentially gives you more outputs. And you start with a really, really high quality draft, and then you can send and get them. And now they're only spending like max 30 minutes going through, making any edits, and then it's good to go. The time saving, the quantum of output, and the quality of the output, I think will just be that much higher for everyone.
I mean, I'm all about outsourcing and creating jobs and stuff, but I understand like the benefit of AI, right? Because it's consistent. So long as something doesn't break, but you're getting the same output, whether it's midnight or,
Yes.
whatever, 5 a.m. or 12 p.m. Like it does the same amount of work. It doesn't lag. Doesn't need another cup of coffee or to go, go take a nap.
Exactly. Emergencies don't something come up. Yeah.
Yeah. So how does it work? Does somebody buy the software, or it sounded like you said it was a subscription. Is that right?
So right now we're still in beta. So for everyone listening, if you are interested in getting the beta program is actually for free for 4 weeks, or the equivalent of 4 episodes. So please, if you want in on that, come apply. It's just at beta.capsho.com/opt-in, all one word. So right now we're trying to get feedback on price and value. They are two very different things, but from this beta program, that's what we're trying to get a handle on, because we don't quite, obviously we know that we have to cover our costs, but what is it that people would actually value something like this at? So that's what we're trying to uncover through this process too.
Yeah. I think you're bringing a lot of value to the industry. There's more and more podcasters out there than ever before. And, if you're a business and you have a niche area, like a podcast is crucial to it. I mean, you're able to get your story out there, have a conversation with professionals in your area, and that brings a lot of credibility to you and your business, your story and everything. So I think you're adding a lot of value to people's business by doing that. So I'm definitely going to look into it. We're always looking at maximizing, get better at everything.
As you should be.
Yeah. So, well, man, you have a great story, and I think we could go into a lot more. I want to be respectful of your time, of course. So is there anything I missed or failed to ask, or you think would be very important to listeners right now? We're not done. I have a couple more questions, but.
Yeah, no, I thank you for this great chat. I think you're amazing. We pretty much covered a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to get into your questions.
Yeah. So, all right. So I usually finish off with, 4 questions and then how people can get in touch with you. But the first question I want to ask, so this shows a lot about winning at life. And so health, wealth, happiness. Now, I look at life a lot like a game. But if you were to look at life as a game, how would you know you're winning? How do you measure your success?
Okay, yeah. So I think and this is funny because my answer has definitely changed. Before, as with a lot of us when we're young, it's like, oh, I've got to hit these goals. I've got to have this, got to be married and have this number of kids and be living in this place in this big house. I've got to be successful and earning this. That used to be what it looked like. Now I actually don't even have a picture of what that looks like. I just have a feeling. I just know that I want to feel, which I do now, fulfilled and happy and, loving waking up in the morning, loving going to bed with, with a peaceful mind. Those are the kinds of things I'm like, I know that's to me what success would look like and winning in life.
That's great. Yeah. And yeah, it does change as you grow up, I think.
Yes.
I know mine has. All right. So next question, what brings you the most joy in life right now?
Right now, it's definitely the smallest things, like being able to walk in the spring, New York City. Like, I just love New York in the spring. With my husband, being able to just dance like no one's watching. Literally, that happened this morning where it was just being silly, and I was just like. Actually, sorry, it wasn't this morning, it was last night. And he was like, and this is the funny thing. So we were just like laughing and joking around and, dancing. And he's like, oh, this might make a really good TikTok ad. This is what happens when you get into business. Yeah. But, it's just all of those little moments that, that just brings so much joy.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. So, if you were to give advice to a young entrepreneur or, a budding entrepreneur or whatever, what would be the fastest way to success for an entrepreneur?
Wow. Having listened to my story, I don't think I'm the right person to talk to about fastest way.
I think you're the perfect person.
I don't know if there is a fastest way to success, because A, it depends on what success looks like to you. I think to your original question before, and then B, like it's so different for everyone. There is no set cookie cutter thing. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure a lot more, like we would all be rich, right? So I don't know if it's the fastest way. I would just trust in the process, in the journey. I think that's a thing, I so many times in the last, since I started, I just wanted to give up, or I was like, you know what, it would just be so much easier if I just went back to corporate, or like I just, and I think the thing that I'm really grateful for is almost the resilience with the optimism to be like, nope, I can do this, pick myself back up and just put one foot in front of the other, continue doing that. And the great thing is, because I've done that, and as I said before, I never regret the journey, because I fundamentally believe that it's set me on the path that I'm meant to be on. Yeah. And I can't even fathom like the path that my future is going to be even more surreal. Like I can't even, so I would just, say to everyone, just trust in yourself and trust that you are on the path that you're meant to be on.
I think that was a brilliant answer. That's actually that's a really good answer. I was on a podcast yesterday and they asked me something similar, and a quote jumped to mind. And this is what happened when you started talking too, was Stephen Hawking said he doesn't believe in God per se, but he's a physicist, right? I believe, or I think he's passed now. But anyway, he said, although he doesn't believe in God, for everything to happen the way it has, our universe is an absolute miracle, right? And I'm not saying you should believe in God or not. I'm just saying that what you said, believe in the process. Like a lot of things happen that lead you to something else, that leads you to something else. And then all of a sudden, like trust in the process. I think that's great. Trust in and commit to the process too, right? Like, and maybe a question I should have asked is, how did what made you guys decide to fail at that, the tech business?
The fashion technology business.
Yeah, it takes a lot to give up on something like that, right?
Yeah, it was difficult. I actually remember because my husband and I were actually in London when Bono and I had this conversation, because we were having to figure things out with our visa. But I just remember that what had happened was, it was actually my birthday. It was my birthday. And I was working on the back end, like on the engine. And at that time, I was just building it on a spreadsheet, because I just wanted to make sure that I understood the rules and the logic and things like that. And for some reason, when I woke up, the whole thing had wiped. It was like gone. And I had a bit of a meltdown. But what happened, because I got on the phone with Bono and I'm like, I'm going to have to build this thing all. And this, by the way, has been like weeks of work. And I think it was just that, you know, when that happened, it was the same thing with, it's almost like I just need like an event to happen to be like, we should probably be asking ourselves different questions, right?
Yeah.
Because when I'm in it, I'm just in it and just doing. Whereas like this was like, okay, we need to step back and be like, is it worth me now rebuilding this thing? And that was when we had to have that conversation of that, do we go ahead or not? And really what it came down to, I think I mentioned, was that we were getting great feedback on, and when you talk to people, they're always going to be so supportive and so lovely and be like, yeah, of course this is going to be great. And this, and that's one great thing. But then the next step is, are they going to actually give you currency? And currency can look like money. It can look like an email address. Like there's different levels of that. And that was where we were coming up against, you know, barrier after barrier. Where we would go back to those people and be like, okay, great, we're going to start to build this thing, you know, like give us your email address so we can keep you up to date, you know, pay for this, whatever, you know. And even at that stage, we were like, oh, maybe like give me your details and I'll get into, like, you know, it was kind of like that brush off.
Yeah.
And I think we had to be really, really honest with ourselves about what that meant. Because it's easy to be like, oh, they're all just busy, you know, that's okay, this thing will work. But like, you know, when you're really asking yourself the right questions, you realize that that's not the reason.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, the signs are there. Sometimes it's hard to make that pivot, but you guys have done well. I'm excited to see how this works. The Capsho, I think that's a lot of value there. All right, last question, and we'll be done. But so what do you do for health? What health being one of the most important things, obviously, to success in life, but what does health look like for you?
Yeah, so I work out pretty much every morning. So this morning I went for a run, generally about 5 miles-ish,
Nice.
that I'll run, yeah. Or I'll do like, yeah, I'll do some weights, or I'll do some yoga or something. So I generally vary it every morning. And I've been taking my vitamins, especially when COVID hit, because my husband's aunt is a doctor, and we were like, what do we do? Like no one had any idea of, you know, what was happening. She was like, just take these vitamins. So we've been well, I know I have been, Ash, not so much. I've been pretty religious at like taking my vitamins, and it seems to be working. I actually came back from a conference in Florida, Podfest. Actually, it had, 1,500, like a lot of people there. And almost everyone I spoke to when we came back had gotten COVID, but I tested and we didn't. So there you go, take your vitamins, look after your body, definitely look after your mind as well.
Yeah, I think it's more important now than ever, and people are realizing that. We had this exact same thing. I went to a convention, everybody got sick, and a couple like in the hospital sick, and me and my brother came back. I don't know, we feel fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. But all right, so if people want to learn more about you, what you're doing, Capsho, or if they just want to get in touch with you, where can people reach out to you?
Yeah, sure. So if you want to learn more, if you have a podcast or you're thinking about launching a podcast and you just want some tips and some advice on how to grow it, listen to my podcast. It's called Grow My Podcast Show. So yeah, come over, join us. We have really fun chats. Obviously, if you want to get into the beta for Capsho, it's free for now. So that's beta.capsho.com/opt-in. Or if you just want to reach out, if you just want to have a chat, find me on Instagram, on any of the socials, actually, under Deirdre Tshien. And yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting with anyone.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Deirdre. This was great. We'll put all those in the show notes so people can reference that. I think you bring a ton of value to the podcasting area, and I look forward to trying it out.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ashton.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care. All right. Thank you so much for tuning into today's podcast. We hope you found the information and insights shared valuable and thought-provoking. And if you liked this show, please subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And until next time, stay winning, stay curious, and crush life. Take care.